Hey guys, it's Justin here, and today I've got a full comparison for you between the iPhone 5S, the iPhone 5C, and the iPhone 5. The iPhone 5S and 5C were announced just over a week ago at Apple's event, the 5S being the flagship phone for the next year, and the 5C is going to be taking the place of the iPhone 5. However, all the internals pretty much remain the same in it, but it does come in a new look and enclosure, something that we haven't seen before, so it is rather interesting. I really hope this video will help the people who currently own an iPhone 5 and are not sure what they would like to upgrade to, or if it's a buying decision between the iPhone 5C and the iPhone 5S. Without further ado, let's go right into the comparison. So let's start out with the hardware. The iPhone 5S has an Apple A7 processor that is a 64-bit architecture and 1GB of RAM, while the 5C and 5 share an A6 processor, also clocked in at 1.3 GHz and 1GB of RAM. Of course, you know that the form factor between the 5 and the 5S pretty much stays the same for the most part, apart from some differences on the camera section and also the home button. It comes in at 7.6mm thick and it weighs in at just 112 grams. The aluminum structure makes it feel very premium, very nice, while the iPhone 5C comes in at about 9mm and it also weighs in at 132 grams. But the overall form factor of the iPhone 5C actually feels a little bit better than I thought, though the only problem I have with it is that it is made out of plastic and that may pose some durability issues, what you may have seen from early drop tests. The 5C is available in quite a few vibrant colors such as blue, green, yellow, white, and pink, while the 5S comes in a space gray I've got here, champagne gold, and also a silver and white. The iPhone 5 on the other hand only comes in a white and silver as well as the black and slate. But here you can see the iPhone 5S really likes to show off its details in terms of the edges, while the iPhone 5C seems to be a nicely polished off piece of polycarbonate that is a nice one-piece feel to it. So when you're holding on the phone, it feels very seamless and very smooth, and it actually feels much better in the hand than I originally thought. In terms of the display, all three of these devices share a 1136 by 640 resolution 4-inch display that is the Retina display, and it has a 326 ppi pixel density. I personally think that screen is just fine, the quality is great, and all the color representation is very good, but I hope that next year Apple kind of catches up in terms of sizing to make a little bit of a larger phone to compare with Android phones. That may not be for everybody, but personally that is what I would like to see next year. As you know, Apple did come out this year with a totally new look to iOS 7. You may know that iOS 6 and the previous generations of iOS first coming out in 2007 looked rather stale. We're starting to get bored of it, so I think the new flat look led by Johnny Ive looks very nice, and in the beginning it may have taken some getting used to, but now I'm actually really enjoying it, and I've been using it since the first day the beta came out. And I'm just showing you guys this by telling you how good it looks with the iPhone 5C. Apple has really wanted to reiterate that it kind of is complementing the 5C, and the flat look of the OS really matches up with the design and look of the phone. They've also included quite a few different backgrounds that will actually complement the color of your phone, as you can see here. And just showing you guys some of the other additional features. Of course, you have the control center, and there's just the multitasking showing you, and there's also a newly redesigned lock screen, for example, and also a notifications bar. Though the overall structure does stay the same, there's just a few different changes and a new design overhaul to it. There's just the camera app, you've got the square photo, slow motion video on the iPhone 5S only, something that you won't see on the iPhone 5C or the 5, so the 5S does have one exclusive feature in the camera. So now on to the benchmarks. Like I said, the iPhone 5S is the flagship for this year, while the iPhone 5C is just replacing the iPhone 5, and we do expect the benchmarks of the 5C and the 5 to be extremely close, if not almost the same. So here's just the processor information and hardware of the phones. For some reason, the 5C and the 5 have 16 megabytes more RAM than the iPhone 5S. I guess you won't see a really big difference to that, kind of interesting. So let's just run the benchmark here, and you do expect that the 5C might even come out a little bit higher, as there was a 7.0.1 update to the 5S and 5C, possibly bringing some bug fixes, while the iPhone 5 is running iOS 7.0. So you can see the iPhone 5S comes out with an absolutely impressive score, doubling the 5C and the 5 in both of the categories. That could be thanks to the 64-bit architecture. However, it shows that RAM as well as the clock speed really doesn't make a huge difference, and I will admit that the speed of the 5, the 5C, and the 5S on normal usage and everyday tasks, you will not notice any differences, but it's good to know that the 5S does have a pretty good level of potential in terms of processing power for upcoming applications and games that may be coming out in the future. The next test we're going to run is 3D Mark, which is what's going to tell you how these phones are going to handle the graphic intensive games that are going to be coming out in the year. So let's just skip to the final score. So you can see the 5 and the 5C come out with a score of over 5,000, which is actually still very, very good. I had no problems gaming on my iPhone 5 over the past year, but the iPhone 5S just throws everything out of the water with a score of over 14,000, which I'm actually pretty surprised about, which tells you how much capability this phone really has. So now that we've done the CPU benchmarks, we can take a look at the real-life browsing benchmarks. I'm going to run SunSpider here, that is just a JavaScript test, and you can take a look at the final score where the iPhone 5S actually doubled the speed of the 5C and the 5, but now it's time to take a look at whether these numbers actually mean anything with a real-life test. So first I'm going to compare the 5C and the 5S in terms of the web browsing page to see which one's able to load it faster. I really don't expect a difference at all between all three of these phones as they do share the same 802.11 Wi-Fi band. The iPhone 5S I kind of expected to have 802.11 AC to make it a little bit more future-proof, but unfortunately we didn't see that this year. So let's just hit the Twitter icon. There you can see the iPhone 5C actually did beat it out by a split second. Of course, I'm trying to hit them both at the same time, so I'm going to run a few tests here to see which one's the real winner. But there you can see the iPhone 5S beat out the 5C by just about a split second. I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to survive if it was just a few milliseconds or even less than that to spare. And once again, the 5S is just a little bit faster than the 5C, but I gotta say they're both extremely fast, and on everyday usage, you really wouldn't mind the extra speed. So once again, there you go, they're just about a split second faster on the 5S's side. Let's just load one more page here. But that just proves that even though SunSpider indicated that the 5S actually doubled the 5C and the 5, there really isn't that much of a difference in real life. So all three of these phones do have 8 megapixel cameras. The 5C and the 5 should share the same sensor, while the 5S, though it is still 8 megapixels, does have a 15% larger sensor to let some more light in, and it is now f2.2 instead of 2.4, so it gives you a little bit of better depth of field. And you also have the dual LED flash, which is the amber and white flash that is combined to give you some better low light images, which we're also going to take a look at. So taking a look at the photos, you can see that there isn't really a drastic difference between all three of them. I guess the 5S is just a little bit more refined, and a few things have been added to the camera to just make it a little bit better, but using the 5 for a whole year, I have to say the photo quality has always served me very, very well. And I did also notice that the 5S from the same distance was able to capture a little bit more in frame as opposed to the 5C and 5. That may be thanks to the larger sensor, but I gotta say if you have the iPhone 5, unless you really want to upgrade, the camera might not be the best reason for it unless you're going to be taking a ton of low light images, and that is where you will notice a huge difference. Now we're going to take a quick look at the video mode, and I didn't really expect any huge differences between all three of these. You can see in general they do look pretty much the same. If you're going to be nitpicking anything, I would say that the iPhone 5S again does capture a little bit of a wider frame. All three of these phones were stacked on top of each other when I was recording it. So you can see that the 15% wider sensor just allows you to capture a wider image, which is always good. And the colors are just a tad richer on the 5S and even the 5C as opposed to the iPhone 5. But really when you're just looking at it, you won't notice much of a difference. On the front of all three of these phones, you have a 1.2 megapixel camera that takes 720p recording. And when it comes to the battery life, the iPhone 5C is said to have a 5% improvement opposed to the iPhone 5, and the 5S is said to have a 10% improvement, and both of them are said to get around 9 to 10 hours of usage. Though I haven't had these devices long enough to tell you if that is completely true, I have to say over the first day I did notice that the 5S's battery is somewhat an improvement. But aside from that, I hope you guys enjoyed this full comparison between the iPhone 5S, the 5C, and the iPhone 5. I will be the first to admit that the benchmark scores do not mean everything, and although the iPhone 5S doubled both of these phones double or even more on some of the benchmarks, they really don't reflect that in real life testing, and I find that the iPhone 5 is actually the same speed as the 5S on regular usage, and even after a whole year it has held me up very well, and it really comes down to whether you're willing to spend the money or if the major features on the 5S, like the fingerprint sensor, are able to justify the cost of a new phone. And also the 5C, it is a nice feeling phone. It feels better than I thought it would, but it would come down to whether you would mind the plastic build quality on it. But let me know right under the comments on what color you're thinking of getting and what model of phone you're coming from or thinking of going towards. And other than that, I'll see you all in the next video.